Oh, boy. And here I was thinking that there wasn't going to be that much to talk about on this Tuesday night. Well, good golly, Miss Molly, was I very wrong. I'm Zach Berman. I think this is going to be a weekly thing now with these playoff rankings dropping on Tuesday night. Usually they start a little bit earlier, but ESPN decided to push the reveal back with the college basketball tip-off in New York and that Kansas-Michigan State game. I don't know how that game's going. I really need to start paying attention to college basketball because after this ends with college football, uNIVERSITY is going to shift to hoops. So that's something worth noting. But we have our rankings. And to start from the top, you know who number one is. Everybody knows it's Georgia. I was at the game on Saturday, actually, against Missouri. They're a borderline NFL team almost. That team is ridiculous. The speed on the defensive side of the ball is borderline. I've never seen anything like it in college football. And Jordan Davis is putting together a Heisman caliber season at defensive tackle. The big question for Georgia going forth is how are they going to overcome the potential loss of their star defensive end and Adam Anderson, who was under investigation for sexual assault. But against Mizzou, Nolan Smith, who is their number 2 edge rusher, he had to become their number 1. He blocked a punt, and he really manhandled a bad O-line. But then again, it is Missouri we're talking about. 43-6 was the final from Athens. By the way, I say this as a fan of college football and also as someone that was out there covering the game. If you are a fan of college football, if you have a bucket list and Sanford Stadium and Athens are not on it, that should probably change. That is one of the most incredible venues, one of the most incredible towns, and just a place that if you're a fan of the sport, you got to see a game there. It is so incredible. But we move on. Number 2, Alabama. I don't know about this because Bama had a scare against LSU, and I don't think they should have had a scare against LSU. They were favored by 29. They only won by 6. And it wasn't that LSU was playing particularly well. It's just that Bama looked sloppy and unprepared, and a lot of mistakes that you don't typically see Nick Saban teams make, they were making almost on repeat, which was a little bit surprising. At the same time, it never felt like it was in doubt that Alabama would lose the game. It never felt like, oh my God, they're actually going to lose this game. But at the same time, there was definitely a little bit of concern, especially with the offensive line, like you bring up there. 50% of pass attempts, Bryce Young was pressured. And that is something you really don't want to see. Alabama had like 8 rush yards the entire game. And against an LSU defense that is admittedly not very good, that's concerning. And it really does feel like Georgia in the field right now. So Alabama's at 2. I think it only makes sense for Oregon to be at number 3. That's where they are. Oregon had a tougher than expected time with Washington. Granted, it was in the pouring rain. So that's really never an easy thing to deal with. And Washington's always a tough place to play. Now, at the same time, this Ducks team, it feels like they're not really living up to potential in how they win their games. And teams tend to play them close. And I look at their schedule down the line. I see a team like Utah they're going to have to play 2 weeks from now. I could see the Ducks having problems with the Utes. I'll get to Utah in a second. But, yeah, no, Oregon, 26-16, they win over Washington. Travis Dye over 100-plus rushing yards. He's really picked up the pace where C.J. Verdell went down. That's something that the Ducks really need. Because the issue with Oregon is that they don't have a great quarterback. And 1, 2, and 4 all have good quarterback play. Anthony Brown is a game manager. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's by no means an elite quarterback, and that's where I believe Oregon's weakness lies. Number 4, Ohio State. I believe they were idle this past week, if I was right. They have Purdue this week, and Purdue has been an issue. Purdue has really been a big problem. And, the spoiler makers always can throw wrenches in plans of contending Big Ten teams. I take that back. Ohio State was not idle. They had a tough time with Nebraska, 26-17. They won out in Lincoln. And Nebraska, just a little sidetrack, they extended Scott Frost. But at the same time, Scott Frost pretty much fired everybody on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't know what the Huskers are doing. I know a lot of people back there, I worked out there this summer, not happy with the decision. I think Scott Frost should be fired, even though his team plays teams close. In the words of Bill Parcells, you are what your record says you are. And the Huskers are 7-3. As for Ohio State, they need to be better. Their offense really seemed to slow down after a couple weeks of being more prolific than at the start of the year. I still think C.J. Stroud is a very good quarterback, and he was not fully healthy at the start of the year against, wouldn't you guess it, Oregon. So if Stroud was not healthy against the Ducks, that really brings up questions as to what would Ohio State have done had C.J. Stroud been healthy in that game. But that's where my question lies. Ohio State, like I said, they have Purdue, they have Michigan State, they have Michigan still left on their schedule. It is not easy sledding for the Buckeyes from here on out. Number 5. That's going to be your Cincinnati Bearcats. And first of all, good on Cincy to move up. And clearly they're the beneficiaries in Michigan State losing. They need to play better, as they almost blew that game against Tulsa. A 3-win Tulsa team had to be stopped on 4th and goal at the 1-yard line for Cincy to lock up the dub. Now, granted, it shows that the committee respects Cincinnati. They have one of the most impressive wins of the year at Notre Dame. And I see Oregon losing between now and Selection Sunday in about a month. So if this is the way that the committee sees things, then yeah, maybe the Bearcats can slide up into that 4 spot, assuming Ohio State would move up to 3. But we move on, and this is the first real what the heck is going on rating. How is Michigan rated over the team they lost to in Michigan State? Michigan is 6, Michigan State is 7. Michigan, they blew out Indiana. Everybody's blowing out Indiana. But that doesn't make a lick of sense. Yes, I know it was a convincing win for the Wolverines, but if the committee is so intent on favoring the winners of these big head-to-head matchups like they are with Oregon over Ohio State, how is Michigan State not ranked ahead of the team they beat in Michigan? That makes no sense. And I'm going to pull up the quote right now because it's ridiculous. The explanation that the playoff committee gave. Hold on. Playoff committee. Yeah, they gave some half-hearted explanation where they were just like, yeah, we think Michigan's a better team than Michigan State. And that makes no sense to me, considering Michigan State beat them head-to-head. The committee admitted that Michigan is the more complete team. What are you talking about? Michigan lost to Michigan State. They lost. They didn't win. Why is Michigan ahead of Michigan State? It doesn't make a lick of sense. And I mean, not that the playoff committee has ever made sense, but this especially just feels particularly wonky and weird. And what the heck? I don't like it. What I do like, however, is who's rated after the Michigan teams. I'm not high on Oklahoma. They don't have a good defense. They haven't beaten anybody really of note now that their most impressive win in Texas has fallen apart. And they're not passing the eye test to me. Yes, they're undefeated. No, I don't think they're as good as anybody ahead of them. I think 8's a fair spot. I don't think they're sneaking into the playoff this year unless mass chaos. That being said, yes, Caleb Williams, very, very good. And I'd like to see what he can do in the future, especially now that Spencer Rattler is going to be moving on to greener pastures, maybe somewhere in the Pac-12 or whatnot. Number 9, Notre Dame. I can't be too hard on the Irish because I said at the start of the year on this stream, Notre Dame is an 8-win team this year. Notre Dame is likely going to go 11-1 into a New Year's Six Bowl, and I have reiterated this every single week. What a job by Brian Kelly, who might be the most overhated, underrated coach in college football, that he has been able to take a team that is pretty mediocre on paper, and their only loss is going to be to a playoff contending Cincinnati team. So, yes, what a job by Brian Kelly, and what a job by the Irish. And they could even move up. I don't think they're going to find themselves in the top 4 or close to the top 4, but a New Year's Six Bowl and an 11-1 season for Notre Dame after the turnover with their roster, that is a smashing success. So good for Notre Dame, good for the Irish. Number 10, Oklahoma State. They had their loss to Iowa State a couple weeks ago. They played Kansas, which is basically a tune-up game. Oklahoma State, I would like to see what they're going to be able to do against Oklahoma. That game's 2 weeks away, and I don't know how much the playoff committee is going to be paying attention to it, but they're clearly going to have their eyes on it in some aspects. I don't think either of the Oklahoma schools can make the playoffs, though. Who do I think can sneak into the playoffs? Well, that would be Texas A&M. Now, let me explain. A&M has one of the most impressive wins over the year when they knocked off Alabama. Texas A&M, also, their 2 losses, if you look at them, one of them was to Arkansas, who's now ranked again, and one of them is to Mississippi State, who was ranked last week. Texas A&M, against a good Auburn offense, really shut the door on Bo Nix and the Tigers. It was an impressive defensive showing. Yes, their offense couldn't get much going. Seth Small, their incredible kicker, and their defense got the scoring done. Impressive win for the Aggies. If Alabama loses again, which is probably going to be to Georgia, what happens? Does A&M get ranked over Alabama? Battle of these 2-loss SEC West teams? Because if A&M gets into the SEC championship, I think A&M is a better team than Alabama. And I think A&M has a better shot of beating Georgia than Alabama. Yeah, I'll say it. I'll put it down right now. The Aggies are a better team than Bama, and they have a better shot of beating Georgia than Alabama in the SEC championship. But they need Alabama to lose again. And I don't know if Alabama is capable of losing again, considering Alabama has New Mexico State this week. Then they have Arkansas, and then they have Auburn. So if one of those 3 teams falls or is able to take down Alabama, likely not New Mexico State because they stink, Texas A&M is going to be in the SEC championship game. Do they put a 2-loss A&M team in the playoff? I don't know. But I think A&M is a better team than Alabama on offense, and I think they are a better team on Alabama defensively. So, yeah, Jimbo Fisher has put a heck of a squad together, and I don't think they should be a 2-loss team, but you are what your record says you are. I keep on going off of that tangent, but yeah, that's just me. If after years of being a sad Giants fan, going back on why are people defending Joe Judge when his record is like 3-6 or whatnot? You got to go with the old Bill Parcells saying. Number 12 and the last undefeated team in the ACC has fallen after blowing a 2-touchdown lead. Wake Forest. They're still going to get a New Year's Six, but any shot at them making the playoff, that's out the window. Sam Hartman, great quarterback. And I really like what the Demon Deacons have put together. This game between UNC and Wake Forest was just an offensive showdown. There was no defense. It was almost hilarious to watch. Sam Hartman really did impress, and I'm excited to see what he can do next year. He's an NFL quarterback. Wake Forest has put together a solid program. Number 13, the Baylor Bears. They have Oklahoma this week, and that game serves up a lot of intrigue. I think the winner of that game cracks the top 7. Baylor, that's a heck of a job by Dave Aranda to get the Bears in such good shape in the amount of time he has. And after Matt Rule left Baylor for the NFL, to have it done so quickly, really a major statement by Baylor. So consider me very impressed. I don't know if Baylor is better than Alamo Bowl caliber, but it's clear that Dave Aranda is building up something nice. Number 14, BYU. Their only loss is to Baylor. They had a nice win over Virginia. Jaron Hall is really, really good. And I think that speaks more to Kalani Sitake's system. I think Zach Wilson was a product of his system as opposed to Zach Wilson being really good. So, yeah, put that down too. And I know there are a lot of Jets fans in uSTADIUM. Zach Wilson was a product of his coach's schemes at BYU, not because he was a good quarterback. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in the NFL right now based on how Mike White has performed with the Jets over the last few weeks. But BYU at 14, Ole Miss at 15. They have a big, big game against Texas A&M this week. Ole Miss, they have their loss to Bama, but I still think the Rebels, a good team. Matt Corral, he is my QB1. I think he should be everybody's QB1 at this point. And in the battle of top quarterback prospects, Ole Miss did knock off Liberty, so good for the Rebs. They're hosting game day this week for only the second time in program history as Texas A&M comes to town. It's exciting times in the SEC West. Number 16, NC State. Dave Doran has done a wonderful job with the Wolfpack, and that's become a fun, exciting program to watch grow. And they have Wake Forest this week in what is a huge, huge conference game in the worst Power 5 conference. Auburn, tough loss, number 17 against Texas A&M. Auburn's still a good team. Bo Nix, like I have said on this show time and time again, he's the Eli Manning of college quarterbacks. One week he can be great. The next week he can be terrible. He can also beat really good teams. He can also lose to terrible teams. So not the performance you're looking for if you're Brian Harsin. I still think Auburn's a good enough team where they have a shot against Alabama. But welcome back to the rankings, Wisconsin. And the fact that Wisconsin is ranked is a joke. I don't think Wisconsin is very good. Graham Mertz had a great game, and Wisconsin wiped the floor with Iowa. I don't know why Iowa was ranked, because clearly Iowa is not very good either. The Big Ten West is a dumpster fire, except for Wisconsin, apparently. The Badgers are one of the best defensive teams in the land, which is definitely interesting, but I don't think they're putting up a fight against anybody in the Big Ten East in the Big Ten title game. Now, who could put up a fight against the Big Ten East? Well, that would be the number 19 team in the land, who, by the way, just knocked off their second top 5 opponent in the last calendar month. The Purdue Spoilermakers defeat Michigan State at 6-3. The Boilermakers now ranked. Aiden O'Connell had a great game, but the story of the weekend for Purdue is their incredible wide receiver, David Bell, who is putting himself firmly in the first round conversation for the NFL draft. Guys, David Bell is freaking awesome. 11 receptions, 217 yards, and a tutty. He's extremely dynamic, and Purdue's starting to become a wide receiver factory after Rondale Moore. Now you have David Bell coming out there. How is Iowa still ranked? What in the world is going on? They're 20th. They shouldn't be ranked. They're not very good. Yes, David Bell is better than Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore is good. David Bell is not a gadget type player. David Bell is going to be a wide receiver 1 or 2 for an NFL team. And he's a more complete receiver than Rondale Moore. I'll get more into that for my big board, which is going to be coming out later this week. So, that's a surprise. Iowa shouldn't be ranked. That's a joke, and I'm not standing for it. And I don't know what the College Football Playoff Committee is thinking by ranking a mediocre at best Iowa team that really was only good because of their turnover differential, which was never realistic for them to upkeep throughout the entire season. 21, Pitt. I do like Kenny Pickett quite a bit. They demolished Duke. They're a good team. Kenny Pickett is the Daniel Jones of this year's draft. He's going to wind up getting drafted way higher than he should, and I look forward to seeing who does that. It's probably going to be Denver, because that would be really funny. Number 22, San Diego State. One of the best teams in the Mountain West. That's not my big area of conversation here. My big area of conversation is the team ranked behind them. And I'm going to go back to how Henry and I went back and forth on ranking the Roadrunners. And finally, at long last, UTSA, Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners are ranked. And yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Roadrunners are finally in the college football playoff poll. 8-0. Boy, they deserve it. They beat UTEP this past weekend. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to make a New Year's Six, but damn would I like to see them try and get close. 24, here's a surprise team, the Utah Utes. And Kyle Whittingham has really been one of the more underrated coaches in college football. I love what he has done with Utah. Utah's a scary team. They're tough. And I think they're going to be a problem for the Ducks later in the year, because Oregon might have to play them twice in short order, considering that they're going to have to play somebody in the Pac-12 championship game. So Utah's pretty good. Arkansas, they're back in the top 25, the Razorbacks, after beating Mississippi State. So what can we take away from this? There's a whole lot of recency bias in the college football playoff committee. If you win a big game, you are going to get ranked, more or less. And I think that is a little bit knee-jerk. I don't love it. I don't love how knee-jerk the playoff committee has become. But at the same time, there are teams that I think deserve to be ranked for a while, and now it's good to see them in there. UTSA, Purdue. But you look at Wisconsin, I don't think they should be ranked. I don't think Iowa should be ranked. And now you're getting into these scenarios where, for whatever reason, Michigan State is ranked lower than Michigan, considering that both Michigan and Michigan State have lost to ranked teams. Michigan State losing to now number 19 Purdue, whereas Michigan lost to, Michigan State. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I would love to be part of these conversations. How do you determine that a team that lost their head-to-head is better than the team that won the head-to-head? Because I just can't get away from number 6 and number 7. To me, it's kind of a joke. But on that note, there's a lot more to unpack ahead of what is a pretty big weekend this Saturday. You will catch me this Saturday. I can't wait to debut the big board this Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I was told to keep it to a tight 30 minutes. I'm actually going to cut it off at 23. So until then, I will see you this Saturday. Splash, thank you for staying up with me late. Enjoy some college basketball, because there's a lot of good stuff on right now. And till then, we will see you Saturday.